I have a question. So, um, I remember seeing work where, in order to handle the batch arrivals in a like clean theoretical way, one models the busy period that generates them by approximating it up to a certain number of moments of the distribution, and then uh, solving the resulting Markov chain. Um, I guess here, since you have general job size distributions, it's not directly applicable, but I wonder if one could take an approach somewhat like that because Mark, it might simplify the arrival process enough to make it tractable for an infinite uh, server system. Is that something, this sort of approximating the batches up to a few moments approach, is that something you've looked at?
Uh, yes, you may, but it may be not necessary to introduce this approximation in this case because the usually the distribution of the batch size is easy to handle. Is does not have any particular bad behavior that make the inversion of the transform unstable or something like this. And once you know the distribution of that batch, you have the exact solution of the infinite server queue with batch arrivals. So yes, in principle, it's possible to resort to this approximation technique, but I don't think that it's necessary for this case.
Okay, okay. So your results are more general than I thought it was. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, I have a few. So first, can you, Andrea, can you give us like some background, like in practice, under what setting, like you kind of this kind of a two level of service, like you, and one level is cross sharing, one level is infinite server, would be applicable to practice. Yeah.
So suppose that you want to obtain some energy saving from your system. Uh, which jobs would you mainly affect for the reduction of speed? So first of all, you wouldn't like to apply the speed control when the queue is heavily loaded, so when there are many jobs inside. And second, to reduce the impact of the frequency scaling, you would like to keep serving the small jobs with high speed, because the small jobs, especially if the queue is heavily tailed, if the job size is heavily tailed, are the most frequent one, and so you keep giving to the majority of the customers a service which is with high level. Unfortunately, in very many cases, you're not in the condition to know in advance which are the small jobs. So this is the case when we use the multi-level queue. So the idea is that if a job is taking more than a certain amount of service, you make a bet, and the bet is that it will demand a lot of service. And so those are the jobs that actually you want to slow down for energy saving. The infinite server queue is just an approximation of the speed scaling. So you basically count the number of jobs which have crossed the threshold that you decide, and then you apply a speed of service which is proportional to that number of jobs. Okay, so let's say that the infinite server queue is just an approximation of the frequency scaling in the sense that it may scale up even at the speed which is faster than the processor sharing queue. This is what you wouldn't like to see, of course, in this kind of model. But we observe that that doesn't happen frequently, so it happens very rarely. So let's say that the PS plus ES is, well, the processor sharing queue is clearly just a processor sharing queue. The infinite server queue is just an approximation of the speed scaling, the linear speed scaling, for just the jobs that are supposed to be the large one. Don't know if this answered your question.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So any other questions? Oh, I have one more question is like you didn't quite address on how to choose the threshold. Can you comment on?
That's of course a problem that is delicate in the sense that the threshold can be chosen according to the distribution of the job size. If you know the distribution of the job size, of course, and then in that case, you can run the model and find the optimal threshold that minimizes your expected response time or your power consumption. Otherwise, you must know at least approximately the type of load that you have so that the bet, let's say that you saying that the jobs that cross the threshold are supposed to become big, okay? That threshold is chosen based on the knowledge that you have on the system. There is good news that if the hazard rate of the job size distribution is decreasing, the multi-level queue does not worse down the performance with respect to a processor sharing. So even if you make a bad choice of your threshold, you can't do worse than what the processor sharing queue would do. And the requirement that the hazard rate is decreasing basically means that the distribution is every-tailed, which is the case for many practical scenarios.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, so thank you.